All right. Hello, everyone. We are back today with episode, I think we're on number 8. I should know by now what number we're on. But today we have Brendan Allen Barrett with us from Start in Phoenix. And he is going to kind of talk about his journey and how he's gotten to where he is now, which is helping family first sellers identify and prioritize how they can turn stuff into sales quickly. So, Brendan, welcome. Thank you for
Hey,
joining
thanks
us.
for. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. I've been looking forward to this thing all week.
Yay! Well, and we had the nice intro of I've already been on your show. Now you're coming on my show. So
Yep,
we
yep.
double tapped a little bit. Why don't you start us off with telling everyone a little bit about your family dynamic?
Okay. So my first little boy, my only little boy, came into the world back in 2014. So he actually turns 3 this weekend. So we're really excited about that. Um, I started fatherhood as kind of a single dad. I wasn't with my little boy's mom at the time. Uh, Since gone on to become engaged to the love of my life, and we've set the date of November 6th. We're going to get married the Sunday after Thanksgiving, so we're really looking forward to that. And so we've kind of got that blended family thing going on already, and neither of us have been married, so it's been an interesting ride. Throughout the time that Lindsay and I, my fiance, have been together, I was dealing with becoming a father for the first time and a single dad at that, and having to go through the awesomeness that is the family court system to make sure that my son had his father in his life and that, he's getting taken care of. But I was also, buried in student debt and flirting with entrepreneurship after having worked in sales pretty much since I was in college, and really even less professionally before that. I was the kid who was flyering the neighborhood so that people would let me mow their lawns and pick weeds so I could afford to go to wrestling camps. Like that was my childhood. So I've been selling stuff for a while.
I love it. All right. So I just want to pause because that whole blended family thing, I know that we have so many members and people watching this or people watching the replay that are going to be able to relate to this, because this is the truth. All of us either come from blended families, are a part of blended families. We all know someone from a blended family, and it just adds those extra layers onto the complexities of life that,
Mm-hmm.
I can just see your journey is going to be so much more powerful for having to deal with that on top of everything. I want to jump back though to you talked about being an entrepreneur from the start. Do you remember back to your earliest age of selling something?
It had to be either like Kool-Aid for a dime out street side, or like wrapping paper that the school sent me home to sell.
That is
Like my
awesome.
parents didn't work office jobs, like so they didn't have people to go in and be like, "Hey, buy my kids wrapping paper." It was like, if you want that cool thing that they told you could win if you sold enough wrapping paper, you better start knocking doors. And so that's what I
Hmm.
did. Probably at a much younger age than I would allow my own son to
I
do that, but
know. Times have changed a little bit.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Tom is one. He's very similar to you. He started when he was younger. He told me that he used to buy candy in bulk, and then he would resell
Hmm.
it to his friends and other kids in school. And he also did the same thing with
Yeah.
paintballs. And
Uh-huh.
then was one of those can collectors when he used to go camping with his dad and his
Yeah.
buddies. He'd be that kid walking around camp collecting everybody's beer bottles and then taking them all back for money. I was like, so it really started early for you then. But everyone who was watching, I would love to hear your stories of if you had, that childhood of always having that entrepreneurial tendency, or if you were, a little bit of a late bloomer, such as myself, and your first sale came a little bit later. I would love to hear your stories. Brendan, let's get back to you though. So being as though you had that entrepreneurial tendency from a young age, when did you actually kind of step into that time of, okay, now I'm gonna do something about it for real?
So like I did that stuff, as a kid, and then I got busy in athletics in school and worked fast food jobs and all these other things to put gas in my truck and go to wrestling tournaments and everything else. Um, by the time I'd gotten to college, I was really interested in business, started pursuing a degree in economics, decided that I don't really want to go to grad school immediately following 4 years of college and 4 years of high school. So maybe I should graduate with a degree I can put to use right away, as opposed to a degree in econ, which is most people were going directly into grad school after that. And so really interested in business, went from econ to I think like a minor in general business, and then I started pursuing my major in communications with an emphasis in public relations. I'd taken a couple of public speaking courses and figured that, hey, this isn't that hard, that icky marketing sales stuff. It's public relations, and it's more organic, and it's selling and influencing without being, Danny DeVito in Matilda, the used car salesman. So I started pursuing that. I figured, I think I was naturally, or at that point in my life, kind of an introvert. I'd focus so hard on certain things that my social circle was pretty small. I had a core group of friends, but I didn't, go out, and make an effort to find any more. So I figured sharpening my communication skills, whether spoken or written, was pretty important, especially if I was going to start a business someday. I didn't know what that business was, but I figured I didn't really want to work for somebody else. So I should learn to speak and communicate, because I'm probably going to be my first salesperson. And I mean, that has come to be true. I mean, I started working in sales. My first, official sales gig, I guess, was with student painters, painted houses for a summer, doing the entrepreneurial internship, as they position it. And, learned a lot the hard way by doing the opposite of what I was instructed to do, just a 20, 21-year-old kid. And then parlayed that into moving cross country after parlayed that into selling electronics at a Radio Shack. So it's, minimum wage plus commission, selling cell phones and radios and different components and all these goofy things. So that was my second sales job. And then I moved cross country to California, thought I was going to start working in a marketing agency somewhere, writing copy for somebody for like $0 an hour. I couldn't even make that. Nobody was willing to hire me full time. Everybody wanted to give me part-time gigs. And then other people weren't willing to hire me part-time because they figured, well, he's going to find a full-time gig and leave us high and dry. And so the first serious job I got was sales in the construction industry. And I've kind of been doing that ever since, both as an employee, then as an independent, marketing sales rep. I still do quite a bit of that. And, now I'm going from that initial independent sales rep lifestyle and being self-employed into building a business, hiring help, virtual help, outsourcing, and creating systems around some of the stuff so that the business is not me. The business is a machine. Right now, I'm very heavily involved in the operation of that machine, but every day we're taking steps to take me out of the business so that it's, an ATM, hopefully.
Yes. So, first of all, love that you referenced the movie Matilda, because that is one of my favorite movies of all time. Second, where in all of this did a book happen? And then third, we're going to come back to what you ended on.
Okay. So the first part, Matilda?
You don't have to answer that one. That was just me giving you props for referencing Matilda. You can answer number 2. When did the book happen that you wrote?
Okay, so after my son was born, I realized a lot of things. One, all of this extra time I was spending in developing a book of business as an employed salesperson, or at that time, I think so I've kind of gone back and forth between self-employment and employment and self-employment. And now I'm done with employment. I'm doing this thing. And so when my son was born, I was self-employed and, doing a lot of soul searching because I wasn't expecting to become a father. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. I wasn't expecting to become a father at 24. And so I was still carrying around a ton of student debt. I was working a ton of crazy hours, which, wasn't conducive to, I'd always grown up knowing I was going to be a father, wanting to be a father, having ideas of what kind of father I wanted to be, and working 12, 16-hour days, 6 days a week, 7 days a week didn't allow me to do that, and I saw the problem. So I was trying to think of ways, how do I do more in less time? The extra time I was using to compensate for my lack of skill and experience as a salesperson, that's not mine anymore. That's my family's. That belongs to my son. In that time, I was starting to get serious with Lindsay. And so I was out looking for solutions. Again, one of the big things was, how do I pay off my debt? So I got really serious about becoming debt-free and getting on a budget, a real budget, not a pretend budget, and sticking to it, and, cutting expenses where I can, and, working the snowball, getting rid of that stuff. So I had more disposable income so that I could then turn around and invest in my family, in my career, in building a business rather than just being self-employed. And part of that soul searching, part of that, self-education was content marketing. I got a degree in public relations and basically just parked that skill set at college. I went out into the sales world and really didn't write anything more complicated than, a 5-paragraph email when a client was being especially troublesome. And so, but that's building content assets, being able to sell to people and influence and educate them without physically being. How do I scale this thing? How do I do work now that's going to work for me for a long time so that I can, again, do more in less time, be more efficient? And so I started to dabble in content marketing. Self-publishing a book seemed like a great way to, generate revenue, generate leads. So I dabbled with that. So Read, Write, Do is my self-published book. And that was very much kind of a game plan on professional development, kind of what I was going through, education through reading, podcasts, getting involved, actually going out and doing things. So reading things, writing about it, journaling, synthesizing the knowledge, and then going out and doing, and then repeating all of those steps. That's the philosophy of Read, Write, Do It. It's still a philosophy I live by, but my content marketing journey and this Content Inc. model that I'm trying to build through Start in Phoenix has gone from very vanilla professional development into the direction of sales, because it turns out, the people who are most interested in professional development, personal development, are salespeople, aspiring entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs. And so people were asking me about sales and how I was closing these 5-figure, 6-figure, larger deals in my day job, and how I was going out and developing relationships with people, generating relationships out of thin air, people I'd never met, people I had no business talking to, people who had years more experience than I did in the industry, and convincing them that they should listen to this kid who's several decades younger than them. That's kind of the journey. Now we're starting to become a hub, yes, for professional development, but more so for people who are selling stuff, the self-employed, entrepreneurs, salespeople, and even more so family first sellers, moms, dads, husbands, wives who want to, continue to be a rock star at work in their business, but not at the expense of their status as a hero back at home. They want to be able to live up to both of those responsibilities, either through work-life balance or work-life integration.
Yeah, love that. You're speaking my language. You've been speaking it since you talked about paying off debt and the snowball, and then we just progressed on. Yes, I love that. We're big proponents of the work-life integration, and I think it's just when you've got so many aspects going on. You've got a day job that you're still working, you've got the entrepreneur, the business that you're trying to build, have it be running somewhat on its own for you, and then you've got the family stuff too. You kind of have to learn a little bit of that integration because nothing really stays separate in those ways. Everything kind of bleeds over and blends in. So it's like having a blended family. You have a blended family and business at the same time. Yeah. So I love that. And then what? Oh shoot! Now I forgot what I should have wrote it down. I was going to jump back and talk about something. Go ahead.
It's funny because you and I first, kind of had a conversation like this on my own show, which is almost another experiment leading into another book.
Oh, I like that.
So my mind is always spinning and trying to make sense and create solutions. Whether I'm working for a client or I'm trying to figure something out in my own life. Lindsay and I. We're not perfect at talking about money. We come from two very different experiences, and we've gone through some things together. Now we're planning our wedding, and these are the biggest expenses or the biggest things that we've ever paid for, as a unit together. And so that's an experience in itself. And so a few months back, I suggested, hey, let's read something together so we have a common language to talk from, to communicate from, so that we're not continuing to pull our hair out talking different languages about the exact same thing. It was frustrating. And so I think we picked, Smart Couples Finish Rich, I think. So it's, a couple decades old, but, still great to accomplish what we were trying to accomplish. Having a common language and a basis for our money talks moving forward.
I love that. I've never heard of that one, but I'm sure Tom has. So do not give him any ideas. He's
the latte a day guy. I can't remember his name right now, but when anybody says it only costs a latte a day, that's like his phrasing.
Okay, that makes sense. That's funny. Yeah, we actually so we didn't read a book together, but we did make a plan and decide that we were going to go through a course together, and that was we did Dave Ramsey's.
Cool.
Oh shoot! Now I can't remember the name. Whatever the money course is that he has, we bought it and we went through that together. We watched the videos together. We did like the workbook and kind of talked through things. And it used to be behind me, but it's not back there anymore.
I can't remember it now. And in fact, I just listened to Total Money Makeover from start to finish with my brother and my mom and my little boy as we drove from Chicagoland area up to
financial peace. Financial peace. That's what it is.
There you go.
That's awesome that you guys listen to that together. But I think it is, it's a little bit of a compromise on both sides to agree to something that is going to be uncomfortable. But in the long run, if it gives you even an ounce of more understanding of where that other person in the partnership is coming from, that's huge. And money is like one of probably the most argued about thing for couples and relationships. Everyone comes from different backgrounds. Everyone has different thoughts about money. And then when you agree to spend the rest of your life with somebody, you don't always have that base conversation from the beginning of, oh, hey, this is how we're going to use our money and this is how we're going to live our lives. And as you go through all these tough things and these unexpected parts of life, that conversation just keeps getting put off and keeps getting put off. And then often we find ourselves at this point where it doesn't seem like we can come back from that. And that's exactly how we were with our debt and how it just built and built and built. And we finally got to that point where we were like, all right, we have to do something about this. And we decided that we were going to do financial peace and we were going to watch all the videos and implement everything that we could out of there in whatever way made sense for us. So I love that you guys are doing that. And I love that you're doing it before you get married. Because we definitely missed the train on that one.
Well, I'm definitely the champion of that effort in our house. But yeah, we've talked about financial peace as well, going through that together before we get married. And I don't know, been a big block about actually signing up and doing the thing, or, neither of us are convinced that we'll get all the way through so much content if we had to do it on our own. So like the solution is go do the actual class in person. And just life is the logistics of it haven't worked out. So a book was the solution. It's one baby step towards. I'm sure at some point we'll end up going through financial peace. Yeah. I've been a Dave Ramsey fan through all of this, this story that I've shared with you. It's helped me so much, but he's also like my favorite Content Inc. model to pick apart and figure out, what can I do in my business? What should I be building towards? Is a great example of content marketing and making, marketing as a profit center, not just a way to sell something else.
Yeah, I love that.
Big Dave Ramsey fan, but like to kind of take it back. So I'm listening to my version. We both downloaded copies of the book. I'm listening to my version on a way to a project that starts on a Sunday night at like 9:00. And I'm sitting on the side of the freeway while the guys are out doing the thing, waiting for my client to actually show up so we can have some FaceTime. And I'm listening to this book and I'm thinking, this is all great information. Some of it I've heard, some of it's a new twist. But this book is a really interesting thing. Like, people are buying it, they're reading it themselves, but they're buying it in pairs. Couples are buying it. Grandmas and grandpas and moms and dads are probably buying it for their newlywed sons and daughters and grandsons. Like, this thing is a marketing, gold mine. Like, I should do something like that. And so, it's the wheel started spinning, and it was, how does a salesperson love? How does an entrepreneur love? Well, I'm only 3 years into being a father. I'm not even married yet. I have no credibility to speak on this topic, but I could be a journalist. I could interview a bunch of people who are out doing it, who have more experience, come from different backgrounds, et cetera, doing it differently than I'm doing it, and aggregate that stuff. Well, how do I do that systematically, and is like build an audience about that, so I don't just write the book and then go get, put it up on Amazon or get it published and nobody's there to buy it or appreciate it, or, have had input on what should be in it. Yeah. And so that's kind of where the podcast came from, is get live interaction over Facebook Live, have a community form around it, have them form the content that comes out after, and then any types of products and services that come after that.
Yeah, I love that. And about the book thing, totally feeling you, because Tom, we already have two outlines of 2 different books that we want to write at some point. And, we kind of revisit them every now and again, and we talk about it, and we're like, it's something that we want to do, but right now is not the right time. So we got it in the backlog, and anytime we think of a new concept on one of those or think of a new idea, we'll pop in and just add it, because we're big fans of Evernote. It's like the best thing ever. So it's there, and we know it's going to happen at some point. But for now, we're just kind of thinking and letting it kind of simmer and marinate a little bit before we do anything about it, which is nice. It's kind of like, you're kind of feeling it out. You're putting the idea out there. You've got some ideas, and I think that would be an awesome book. I mean, I read For Better or For Work. Tom, that was one of the books that Tom suggested, and what I loved about it was not a book where it's just the author talking the whole time. They pop in and out of, what they're saying and the concepts they're talking about, and they share real life stories with you about entrepreneurs that worked together, or, they weren't working together and then they had their own separate issues, or they had kids and then their kids grew up and they interviewed the kids, and, they were telling them like, oh, here's what I felt when my dad was building this business, or when my mom was this. And so it was kind of very interesting to see all those different perspectives and to hear different stories while I was reading through the books and the concepts. So I love your idea. I'm excited. Now I'm going to be stalking you to see when you write it, or if you write a first chapter, I'm going to be like, sign me up.
One day we'll get there. We'll get there.
So before we kind of wrap things up here, I do like to keep them short as we have a lot of family watchers and not everyone always has time to be live on videos or to watch the replays. So if I try not to make them like super long for the sake of everyone. But what is the biggest piece of advice or the biggest lesson from your journey that you'd like people to kind of take away from this?
I think it's kind of what you were alluding to just a couple of seconds ago in your planning. Like, it's okay to take it a step at a time. And heck, it even helps if you journal about this stuff to help you synthesize the thoughts. You know, don't make your conversation with your significant other the first time you've uttered a phrase that could be some news that they don't want to hear or you know, is going to be damaging to the dynamic of the household. Because you know, if you're married or soon to be married, like, that's the basis of the household. That's the glue. Like, that needs to come first. That's the foundation of everything thereafter. Like, yeah, we all want to have, you know, great, competent, healthy kids, and we all want to have fantastic businesses and be able to retire, you know, early and maybe often if we go in and out of retirement. But like, all of those things become significantly more challenging, if not impossible, without the foundation of, you know, the two of you. So, you know, take things at a step at a time, breathe, don't get ahead of yourself. You know, if journaling helps you, do it, and do it a lot. So that, again, you can make your plans, do the first things first, have the tough conversations in a productive manner, and, you know, grow together so that both of you can do all the things that you want to do in and out of your household.
Ah, I love that. I love that communication and knowing, you know, I love that you suggest journaling, because that is, I don't actually like journal, but we do use Evernote as like a notebook, and I'm always putting thoughts in there and talking things out. And it's funny that you mentioned like typing something out or writing something out before you say it to your spouse, because I totally do that. Oftentimes I get so many thoughts in my head and I'm struggling with how to say it or with what exactly I want to say. And every time, as soon as I start writing and I write everything out and then I go back and read it, it all becomes very clear. And then I'm able to go and talk to Tom and be like, listen, this is what I need to talk to you about. And this is kind of how I'm feeling. And, you know, we can then take the conversation to where it needs to go. So that is a great piece of advice. Thank you. And where can people find you so that, you know, anyone that's a family first seller that, you know, is looking for some resources or maybe needs some help with selling can come in and check you out?
So Start in Phoenix and Phoenix is abbreviated phx.com is kind of my home for everything. So that's the blog. A lot of the podcasts and Facebook Lives are getting repurposed there. So you can check me out at startinphoenix.com to get more information on best practices in selling, in family first selling, and business development. A lot of B2B, B2 government agencies, and even B2C stuff can be found there. And then I can be found on Facebook at facebook.com/startinphoenix, startinphx, and that's where all of the podcast content actually goes live for the first time. So if you want to be up front and center, like us on Facebook, or you can join the mailing list at startinphoenix.com/family.
Awesome. And we will make sure to pop back into the comments and put the links in so that you guys don't have to type them out and find them. And then we'll link to your book as well, because I'm sure that's now going to go on Tom's list of books to read, as he likes to add many to it and tries to add them to mine. But I usually resist.
I mean, I'm sure there's some gems in it, to be entirely honest. It's such an early thing in my journey. I'm not even promoting the thing right now. I may rewrite it and be super excited about it again, but right now it's a footnote on a lot of these cool things that I'm doing right now. So
awesome. Hey, if it gets us into that mind space, I think it's
I
totally
always
worth it.
appreciate the support, however.
All right. Well, if there are no questions, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. If you are watching the replay and you weren't able to ask a question live, please pop in and post up your comments or questions, and Brendan and I will jump back in and answer those. All right.
Yes.
That is all for this week's episode. Brendan, thank you so much for coming on the show. So
Thanks
nice
for
to
having
have
me.
you. I got to hear your story instead, and since we talked about mine last time. All right. Bye,
Very
guys.
cool. Very cool.